After banning the wheat exports, the centre has now curbed the export of the wheat flour and the related item. The centre has made it mandatory that now the exporters have to take prior permission from the inter-ministerial committee before they take any outbound shipment. The notification has been issued by the DGFT, and as per the notification, it has been made mandatory that from 12th of July, because this entire notification will come into effect from 12th July, and post 12th July, the outbound shipment, it has to be the permission has to be taken from the inter-ministerial committee. In addition to this, the notification also mentions that the shipment which is taking place, in the sense that loading is there taking place in the ship of wheat flour before 6th of July, that will be allowed. In addition to that, the consignment that has been sent to customs for further clearance from 6th of July to 12th of July, that will also be allowed. But from 12th of July, the prior permission has to be taken from the IMC. Now, why this step has been taken? So, the reason that has been cited by the sources is that the government wants to check, government wants to stop those exporters, those who are in the market and those who are trying to make quick money by exporting a large or unusual quantity of wheat flour. So that is the reason that government has came up with this notification. And if we go by the data, so unconfirmed report suggests that by April 2022, around 1 lakh ton of wheat flour was exported from India, because on May 13th, the government put a ban on the export of wheat, and so this was quite a high number. There was an exponential increase in the export of wheat flour as well as the related item. So seeking this, the government has came up with this new order, new decision, that now the exporters, they have to take a prior permission from the inter-ministerial committee before taking the outbound shipment of wheat flour and the related item.
This seems to be a lot to do with food security in India, and of course to control prices with rising inflation too. But let's get further perspective on this. Siddhartha Sanyal is Chief Economist and Head of Research at Bandhan Bank, and he joins us on India Development Debate tonight. Great to see you again, Siddhartha. You know, India has banned all exports of wheat grain without government approval. They did this in May. And it sparked a record surge in global prices. There was condemnation from several countries. Now, with the curbs on wheat flour, we are still, battling rising inflation. Back in May, of course, when the government banned the export of wheat with immediate effect to control food prices in the domestic market, the daily average retail price of wheat, that went up close to 20% compared to prices a year ago. So how effective do you think these latest curbs on wheat flour and related products are going to be in controlling domestic prices of wheat products and perhaps work towards greater food security in India?
Well, I think this is a very important step. The way I would see, as you rightly said, there has been an angle of how the international narratives will evolve around this particular move, but and at the same time there will be some bit of additional supply to domestic markets, so the immediate effect on food grain prices in general and wheat in particular will have some kind of cooling effect. But I think the overall impact is slightly broader. It's not only wheat, not only food grains. It actually shows the seriousness and the agility on the part of policymakers in terms of addressing the domestic inflation issues at this moment. Global commodity prices, where we are not really big players, there your ability to impact prices is relatively less. But in case of some of the commodities where we are a significant player, some of these moves, while there are certain international ramifications around this kind of moves, and it cannot be a very, very permanent kind of move for sure. But at the same time, to address the inflation problem on a near-term basis, some of these moves can actually be pretty effective. And more importantly, whenever there is a speculative element to some of the commodity prices and food item related prices, this kind of moves will create some kind of uncertainty in terms of speculators, that can also lead to some kind of cooling down or check-in price rise in certain commodities.
Yes, and those price rises we've definitely seen in wheat. These higher international prices going around for wheat, do you think they're going to sustain going ahead? And if so, how much is India losing out on the export potential with the kind of curbs that we've put on wheat products like flour?
Well, you are right that there is definitely some impact in terms of all those export potential which we could have gained. But I think if we need to weigh on the benefit, cost and benefit, I think managing the immediate inflation related issues is extremely important at this juncture. The way inflation had been panning out, that was causing quite a bit of uncertainty in terms of not only on the interest rate spectrum as well as on the domestic economy. This was the inflation problem and some kind of related pressure on rupee was actually creating some additional pressure in terms of flows. So basically, some of the FIIs had started putting out, taking money out. If you see the debt market, there had been significant sell-off during the course of the year. So even at the cost of some bit of near to medium term, loss of export potential, if we actually move a step further in terms of controlling inflation in a blunt way, that possibly would be more important in the very near term, in my view.
Siddhartha, also we've had a punishing heat wave in the months of March and April, and that has caused a drop of around 5% in the harvest of wheat. Obviously, it has prompted fears of shortages in the domestic market, and we're trying to arrest that. So how well do you think these curbs are going to insulate our domestic markets from the global wheat crisis? In your opinion, how much does this serve?
Well, with the new set of moves, a sizable part of the domestic demand will be catered domestically. So to that extent, in that case, you actually the domestic price become a lot more important in the near term for you. So that way, this additional supply should clearly be helpful. It's if it persists for a very long period of time, then over a period of time you have to track the international prices. There are cross commodity linkages. All these things will be coming into play. But at this moment, that the domestic supplies are far more dominant factor than the international prices in the very near term, and that's why my sense is that at this moment they are focusing on the inflation control, which was otherwise putting a bit of pressure on the currency also over the course of the last few weeks. That's possibly the right move.
Wheat, of course, is the main cereal crop in India. It's the world's second largest wheat producer. India is, of course, after China. India has produced as much as 109 million tons of wheat last year itself, Siddharth. But we've been able to export only around 7 million tons. As far as farmers are concerned, in terms of the opportunities over there, where do they currently stand? Because, yes, the possibilities have existed, but the government has had its way to kind of control inflation to ensure food security. But where does that leave our farmers?
No, I agree with that particular point of yours. So in the very near term, one section of farmers who might be well poised in terms of supplying in the international market, they will be losing out on certain opportunities. But at the same time, if I take the broader picture, I think it's difficult to ignore as I mentioned earlier, also relative cost and benefit, and that's why this particular move. So your point well taken, but I would see that this is some kind of a possibly a temporary phase for a few months, where the near-term benefit is possibly more than the cost to a section of people.
Siddharth, do you think that this creates a certain amount of unpredictability? Of course, these times perhaps require that, but sometimes that can be controlled too. When you're looking at prices, when you're talking about the government moving into certain sectors to be able to control inflation, sometimes to stem the fall of the Indian currency, the government has been making those moves. The RBI has done its bit as well, but it does create a sense of unpredictability. Markets, by and large, don't like that. The uncertainty can have a telling effect on market sentiment. And in terms of general fears of recession, of global recession, there is a school of thought that says that it's fear that is driving the creation of this recession itself. Where do you stand on that debate?
Well, Vikram, I see quite a bit of merit in what you are saying, that uncertainty, unpredictability in terms of the policy regime is not really welcome by any industry, particularly investors, financial markets. Absolutely correct. Now, I would tend to see it in a slightly different way. While there is certain unpredictability, etc., you can argue for at this moment. If I look only from the lens of say, wheat market or certain other commodities or certain other, segment. But my sense is that the government is in this way showing greater resolve and determination around ensuring broader financial market stability and broader stability of key macro variables such as inflation and INR. So while in case of certain very specific commodities and certain very specific segments, it might mean a little bit of uncertainty. But if I see a broader picture and a broader canvas, you might interpret it in an exactly different way.
Yes, indeed. There are several perspectives, and indeed, you can choose which one to go with. But this is the reality of our times. We have to fight inflation. We have to keep those prices in check, but we have to keep the engines of economy chugging along. And if India has to stay ahead of the curve and seek out the opportunities in these volatile times where globally we are seeing this kind of slowdown taking place, the possibility of a recession in the US, China is fighting in its own way. Economies, by and large, will have to derive the best methodology to be able to tackle the problems that they foresee in the near and the distant future. Siddhartha Sanyal, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us with your perspective on this. Meanwhile, the development, monitoring and evaluation